I have always believed that rain makes grief honest. Sunlight pretends. It glints off polished wood and forces you to squint, like the world is asking you to smile back. Rain lets you bow your head without apology. It turns the earth soft enough to receive what we cannot carry any longer. So yes, it rained the morning we buried my husband. My name is Angela Robinson. I am 50 years old, a black woman with hands that have folded 1,000 church bulletins, scrubbed 1,000 countertops, and wiped 1,000 tears, most of them not mine. I grew up in a small house on a street where folks sat on porches until the mosquitoes escorted them inside, where a casserole at your door was its own grammar of love, and where the word widow was something you whispered about other women, not a label that would one day fit me like an old coat. We didn't have much for the service. Simple, the funeral director had said, the way a doctor says routine. A plain casket, an hour in the chapel. 30 chairs, which was 20 more than we needed for the friends who would brave the weather and the awkwardness. No flowers except the ones I cut from a grocery store bouquet the night before, trimming stems at my kitchen sink, the water running cold enough to make my fingers sting. I laid those flowers against the wood myself, and when I stepped back, it looked like I had placed a handkerchief over a wound too large to bandage. Marcus stood just behind me, tall in his rumpled suit, the same one he wore when he crossed a college stage last spring. 24 and trying not to look like he was holding me upright. He kept his jaw tight the way his father used to when a supervisor spoke to him like he was a boy. Jasmine hovered near the doorway, 17, thin as a question mark, her eyeliner a little smudged, her mouth set in that hard line she learned this past year, somewhere between TikTok dances and algebra proofs. She was angry at death for choosing our house, angry at me for not stopping it, angry at the world for being the kind of place where hard hats and safety briefings still end in phone calls from numbers you don't know. They said it was a workplace accident. They said words like rigging failure and immediate, which is supposed to be a mercy but lands like a theft. My husband, Daniel, had the kind of laugh that filled a room and then apologized after. He could fix a leaky sink with a roll of duct tape and a prayer. He drove the long way home if it meant passing a field lit up with fireflies. He died on a Tuesday while lifting what was too heavy for a single man to bear, which seemed to me a parable we should have listened to sooner. In the chapel, the pastor did the good work pastors do. He wrapped scripture around the edges of our sorrow until it felt less sharp. People from the job site came in stiff suits and damp collars. A few neighbors slipped in, handed me tissues already crumpled with their own griefs. The casket sat at the front like an unopened letter. I could have sat in the front row, but the front row felt like a spotlight, like I owed the room a performance I couldn't give. So I chose the second pew, my purse pressed to my hip because poverty has a muscle memory. The program had Daniel's name spelled right, at least. I took comfort in that, the way you do when the big things are too big and the small things are all you can control. If we'd had money, there would have been music, live, not a Bluetooth speaker humming the edges of Amazing Grace. There might have been a reception hall, a slideshow of happier days, a spread of food that says, stay as long as you need. Instead, there was coffee in foam cups that tasted faintly like someone else's sadness and a tray of cookies from the church freezer. When the service ended, the room emptied the way rooms do, in pairs and trios, like people are afraid grief might be contagious. I wasn't alone, not technically. Marcus squeezed my shoulder each time someone pressed my hands and offered the liturgy of loss, if there's anything you need. He had always been old for his age, a child who put his own toys away without being asked. Now he watched me as if any sudden movement might shatter the thin glass we were both standing on. Jasmine avoided my eyes, picking at the chipped polish on her thumb, nodding politely to adults who called her sweetheart and baby like those words could rewind the last week. At the cemetery, the rain graduated from drizzle to a steady lesson. The men with the shovels worked with quiet shoulders. I watched the casket descend, and there was that tug in my chest, primitive, maternal, like the first time Jasmine took her hand out of mine to cross a classroom alone. Only this time there would be no hand reaching back. Mom, Marcus said softly, as if the word might break. I nodded, though I didn't know what I was agreeing to. that we should go, that we should keep breathing, that we should pretend adulthood is made for moments like this. And then I noticed him, standing a little apart under a black umbrella that had seen better days. Silver hair, suit that knew its way around a boardroom, eyes that tried not to stare. He watched the service with the careful attention of a man who is used to being watched himself. When the last handful of dirt hit the lid with that flat, unforgiving sound, he stepped forward. Mrs. Robinson? His voice was smooth as a radio at midnight. He held the umbrella so the three of us could fit beneath its small mercy. I'm David Williams. I worked with Daniel years ago. I remembered the name the way you remember an address you no longer live at. Daniel had mentioned him a handful of times, each story a half-finished sentence. This guy Williams. He's smart as a whip, but not the kind to show it. Before life interrupted with dinner burning or a child needing help with homework. I'm sorry for your loss, he said, and his eyes did the thing eyes sometimes fail to do. They meant it. Thank you, I replied, the words formal, borrowed. My voice sounded like it was walking on tiptoe. He glanced at Marcus, then at Jasmine, then back to me. If it's all right, he added carefully, I'd like to speak with you about some arrangements. Nothing that needs deciding today, just help where help is appropriate. The way he said appropriate made me want to smile, and the fact that I didn't told me how tired I was. Pride is a stubborn tenant. It pays its rent late and refuses to be evicted. I felt it rise in me then, the old voice that keeps your spine straight when your wallet sags. We can handle this. We always have. But the truth of it lay soggy in my purse with the folded bills and the overdue notice from the electric company. We had handled things before. This felt like a thing too big for handling. What kind of help? Marcus asked, their roles reversed, my son taking on the questions his father would have asked. Mr. Williams looked over his shoulder at the car idling near the curb, a driver waiting with hands folded on the wheel. The funeral home, he said. They called me yesterday. Daniel had my card on file. I asked them to send the invoice to me. I opened my mouth, closed it, opened it again. Words were a poorly stocked pantry. We can't accept. You can, he interrupted, not unkindly. And you won't owe me anything, Mrs. Robinson. Your husband was a good man, the kind that shows up early and leaves late and makes the middle count. He helped me once at a time when help was what I needed. Consider this paying attention. Paying attention. It was a strange phrase for money, and somehow it fit. He turned to Jasmine, softened his posture the way adults do with teenage girls who have decided they don't trust men in suits. I knew your father, he said. He was proud of you. Jasmine blinked hard, her chin lifting in reflex. He didn't like me wearing eyeliner, she said, which wasn't the question asked and wasn't the truth spoken, and somehow was both. Mr. Williams smiled like a man who knew detours led to destinations. He handed me a card, thick, white, the kind that makes a sound when you set it down. Call me when you're ready, about anything or nothing. I can listen. Sometimes that's the only affordable service left. When he walked away, the umbrella created a brief shadow that I wanted to step back into. Instead, I tucked the card into my purse, the way you tuck a note into a Bible, between psalms you mean to memorize and psalms that have already memorized you. On the drive home, the rain made the city blur, all the edges smudged like a child's watercolor. Marcus drove, because my hands shook too much on good days, and this was not one of those. Jasmine sat with her knees tucked up, her sneakers leaving half-moons of mud on the back of the passenger seat. No one turned on the radio. Grief has its own soundtrack. Our apartment smelled like lemon cleaner and old coffee. I had lined up casseroles on the counter, a handful from church ladies who knew my maiden name and the years my father sang bass in the choir. I stared at the foil pans, at the economy of food in rows, each one a small promise. You don't have to cook tonight. You don't have to figure out tomorrow while you're swallowing today. Mom, Marcus began, and I stopped him with a raised hand. Not yet, I said. Let's just be quiet for a while. He nodded, grateful to be told what to do, just like when he was little and storms came with his name on them. Jasmine retreated to her room, that narrow sanctuary where the mirrors know her secrets and keep them. I went to the kitchen sink, turned on the water, and let it run. Sometimes the sound is enough, sometimes it isn't. On the windowsill above the sink is a line of tiny souvenirs. A seashell from the lake where we couldn't afford to rent a boat but made a day of it anyway. A toy car from Marcus's first Happy Meal. A clipped photo of Jasmine in a tutu mid-twirl, her mouth open in a laugh so big it stole my breath. I touched each one like they were beads on a rosary, and then I pressed my palms flat on the counter and prayed a small, ordinary prayer. Lord, help me carry them. The phone buzzed on the table, a text from a number I didn't recognize. This is David Williams, no need to reply. Just letting you know the funeral home is settled. Breathe if you can, sleep if you can't. I didn't reply. I slipped the phone back face down and stood in the hum of our small kitchen. Outside, the rain softened to a whisper. Inside, I did what mothers do when the world requires it. I washed the dishes we hadn't used and dried them as if the ritual could keep the roof from leaking, the lights from flickering, the children from breaking. There are days you start with what you've lost. This was one. But as I stacked the plates and heard Marcus moving in the living room and Jasmine thudding something against her bedroom wall that meant she was still here, I remembered something else. There are also days you start with what you have left. And for now, that would have to be enough. The morning after the funeral, I woke before the sun. Grief has its own alarm clock. It doesn't care what time you closed your eyes. It doesn't care that your body feels like a stone at the bottom of a river. It wakes you anyway, nudging you with a memory you didn't ask to replay. The apartment was quiet. Marcus's shoes were by the door, neatly paired because that's who he is. Jasmine's jacket was tossed over a chair because that's who she is. I stood in the kitchen, the hum of the refrigerator reminding me that bills don't grieve. They keep coming, rent due, light bill overdue. The hospital had sent a final notice envelope last week, as if there is ever anything final about the debts of the poor. I tied my work shoes, the ones with soles worn thin from mopping hotel hallways, and left before either child stirred. By 7, I was pushing a cart down the corridor of the Grandview Hotel, the vacuum cord trailing behind me like a leash. I wiped mirrors streaked with lipstick kisses, sheets that smelled of perfume stronger than honesty. Guests walked past me like I was wallpaper. That's what you become when you clean for a living, invisible. The truth is, I didn't mind the invisibility. What I minded was the ache in my back, the overtime slips that added up to less than a week's groceries. After the hotel, I had a few hours at home before my second shift at a fast food place, where the fryer oil sticks to your hair so thick no shampoo can shake it. By the time I dragged myself back to our apartment that night, my legs trembled. Marcus was at the table, flipping through job applications. His degree was in business administration, a title that sounded promising until you tried to turn it into rent. Any luck? I asked, lowering myself into a chair. Couple interviews, he said, not looking up. But everyone wants experience. Funny how you can't get experience until someone hires you, and no one hires you without it. I touched his hand, the same broad hand his father had, veins standing like blue rivers. It'll happen, I said. My voice tried to sound like faith. Jasmine slammed her bedroom door a moment later, the way only teenagers can. She emerged, phone in hand, eyes sharp as knives. Do you know what Kelsey posted today? She demanded. Morning, sweetheart, I said, because sometimes the only weapon you have is gentleness. She posted pictures from her sweet 16. Limo, hotel suite, new car, a BMW, and what do I have? Hand-me-down shoes and a mom who's never home. Her words sliced deeper than she meant them to, maybe deeper than she even knew they could. Marcus straightened in his chair, ready to defend me, but I lifted a hand. Jasmine, I began, choosing each word as if it were a stone I had to step on to cross a river. I know it's hard. I know it isn't fair, but I'm doing everything I can. Her face twisted. Well, your everything isn't enough. And then she was gone. Door slamming again, music pulsing through the thin walls like a heartbeat out of rhythm. I sat there, too tired to cry. Marcus leaned back, exhaling through his nose. Don't listen to her, she doesn't mean it. But of course she meant it. Children always mean it in the moment, even when they regret it later. The next week blurred into one long stretch of work. I started forgetting meals, rushing between jobs. At night, I counted coins in my purse, wondering if I could make the rent. Then, on a Tuesday evening, while wiping down tables at the burger joint, the world tilted. I felt a dizziness, sharp and sudden. My knees buckled. The mop slid from my hand. The last thing I saw before the floor rushed up to meet me was a teenager staring from the counter, her fries forgotten. When I woke, it was to the antiseptic smell of a hospital room. Marcus sat by the bed, his eyes rimmed red. Jasmine was curled in a chair, asleep, her phone slipping from her fingers. Mom, Marcus said, his voice cracked, you scared us. The doctor's words were simple: exhaustion, malnutrition, stress. He listed them as if I didn't already know, as if mothers don't keep those words folded in their bones. I closed my eyes. Somewhere in the hallway, footsteps echoed. And then that voice again, steady, careful, like someone who has learned power can bruise if not handled gently. Angela? I opened my eyes, Mr. Williams stood in the doorway, hat in hand. He looked almost out of place in the fluorescent light, a man of tailored suits in a world of paper gowns. I heard what happened, he said. Let me help. The words hung in the room, help, a simple word, a dangerous one. Marcus leaned forward, waiting. Jasmine stirred awake, blinking, her face tightening when she saw him. And I lay there between my children, between my pride and my need. The weight of both pressing so heavy, I wasn't sure which one might break me first. When you spend most of your life refusing help, the offer of it feels like a trick. Like the old fairy tales where the stranger at the door promises 3 wishes but leaves you cursed by the third one. That was my first thought when Mr. Williams spoke. Let me help, he'd said, standing in that hospital room as if he belonged there, his voice steady, his suit untouched by the cheap chair he refused to sit in. I looked at Marcus. His eyes were hungry, not for food, but for relief, for someone to take this load off my shoulders, even for a day. Jasmine crossed her arms, her expression sharp as barbed wire. I could almost hear the thought in her head, why is he here? What does he want with us? Mr. Williams, I began, my throat tight. I appreciate what you've done already. The funeral? He lifted his hand to stop me. This isn't about the funeral anymore, Angela. This is about you. Those kids. His gaze lingered on Marcus, then Jasmine. You can't work yourself to death to keep a roof over their heads. It's not noble, it's dangerous. I wanted to argue. I wanted to tell him that black women have been working themselves past the point of exhaustion since this country was born, and no one ever called it dangerous, only expected. But my body betrayed me. The Roman 4 needle in my arm, the tremor in my fingers, the dull ache in my chest. What are you suggesting? I asked finally. I own a small chain of restaurants, he said. Casual dining, nothing fancy. I need someone reliable to oversee day-to-day operations at one of the locations. It pays better than both your jobs combined, benefits too. The words benefits too landed like a stone in water. Health insurance, paid time off, words that belong to other people's lives. Marcus leaned forward. Mom, you should take it. I frowned at him. I don't even know the first thing about managing a restaurant. You know about people, Williams said simply. And you know about hard work. That's more than half of it. The rest you can learn. Jasmine finally spoke, her voice low but cutting. Why are you doing this? What do you get out of it? He turned to her, and for the first time I saw something almost like hurt flicker across his face. Because I made a promise to your father. And because sometimes doing the right thing doesn't need a return. Jasmine rolled her eyes and turned away. She didn't believe him. Maybe I didn't either. The doctor came in then, checking vitals, tapping notes into a tablet, declaring I could go home by morning if I rested. Rest, the most foreign word in my vocabulary. That night when Marcus dozed off in the chair and Jasmine scrolled silently beside him, Mr. Williams lingered. He lowered his voice. Angela, I know what this looks like. A man like me stepping in, offering a job money. But I meant what I said at the cemetery. Your husband helped me once, years ago when my business was starting. He didn't even know how much he did. He gave me advice, calmed me in a moment when I almost lost everything. I swore if I could ever repay that debt, I would. I see this as keeping my word. I studied him. His face was lined in a way that spoke of nights spent making decisions that cost men their jobs or saved them. His hands were steady, like he had lived long enough to stop fidgeting with excuses. I don't want charity, I whispered. He shook his head. Then don't take it as charity. Take it as a hand reaching out when you're drowning. You still have to swim, Angela, but maybe you don't have to swallow so much water. I looked away, blinking back the tears that burned my eyes. I hated that he could see through me, hated more that he might be right. By morning, I signed the release forms and walked out of the hospital with Marcus at my side, Jasmine trailing behind. Mr. Williams' car waited at the curb, sleek and black, too much for a woman like me. He offered us a ride. I refused, clutching my coat tighter, choosing the bus that rattled and groaned like it was telling me, "Don't forget who you are." But in my purse, folded neat as a prayer, was his business card. That evening, as I sat at our kitchen table staring at another stack of unpaid bills, Marcus placed the card in front of me. "Mom, call him." I shook my head. "Mom," he said again, firmer this time, the way his father once spoke when he meant a thing should not be argued. "You've carried us this far. Let someone carry you for a change." Jasmine slammed her bedroom door, her voice muffled through the thin walls. "She's just selling herself to him?" The words cut deeper than the overdue notices. I pressed the card flat under my palm, the numbers staring back at me. A job, a chance, a risk. And for the first time in a long while, I wondered if survival might actually mean learning to say yes. I said yes, not out loud, not right away, but in the quiet way a woman says yes when her body has already betrayed her with weakness. I called the number on that card 3 days later, after staring at it long enough to memorize the digits, after whispering prayers that sounded more like sighs. "Angela," Mr. Williams answered himself as if he'd been waiting by the phone. "I'm glad you called." The next week, I started at his restaurant, one of those chain places with booths too shiny to be comfortable and menus thick as Bibles. They trained me in scheduling, ordering, handling staff. By the end of the month, I wasn't scrubbing floors anymore. I was checking boxes, signing forms, calling shots. My paycheck was bigger than I'd ever seen my name on, though most of it evaporated into bills before I could catch my breath. Still, for the first time in years, I felt the faint hum of possibility. Then came the apartment. "Angela, you can't keep living where you are," William said one evening after stopping by the restaurant. "It's unsafe, too small. Let me move you and the kids someplace better. Just a rental, no strings." I wanted to refuse, but Marcus's eyes lit up at the thought of a place where the paint didn't peel and the neighbors didn't argue loud enough to drown out homework. Even Jasmine paused, though she quickly rolled her eyes and muttered, "We don't need his charity." But a month later, there we were, standing in a sunlit apartment 2 blocks from the park, with a dishwasher I didn't have to load by hand, and a balcony big enough for Jasmine to pretend she didn't like the view. The first night, I lay awake in the master bedroom, sheets crisp and unfamiliar. I should have felt grateful, but instead I felt exposed, as if the walls were glass and the world could see me clutching blessings that weren't mine to hold. Jasmine's resentment grew louder in the new place. One evening, she cornered me in the kitchen. "Do you even hear yourself anymore, Mom?" she snapped. "Running around saying yes sir to that man, moving into his place like we're some project he gets to fix." I set down the plate I was drying. "This isn't his place, it's ours, and I'm not saying yes sir. I'm saying thank you." "Same thing," she shot back. "You're bending over backwards for him, and he's just sitting there enjoying it. Dad's barely cold in the ground, and you're letting some old rich white guy play savior." The slap came before I even realized my hand had moved. The sound echoed against the clean walls, sharper than anything in that moment. Jasmine's eyes widened, not just from the sting, but from shock. I had never struck her before. Marcus appeared in the doorway, his face tight, ready to defend his sister, but Jasmine spoke first. "You hit me," she whispered. I reached for her, but she pulled away, storming down the hall and slamming the door. The sound was a knife in my chest. Marcus stayed in the doorway, shaking his head. "Mom, she doesn't understand, but don't let her push you into something you regret." When he left me alone, I sank into the chair, my hands trembling. I hadn't just struck my daughter. I had struck the very thing I was trying to protect, the fragile thread of family holding us together. Later that night, when the apartment was quiet and I knew both children were awake in their separate rooms, listening to the silence between us, I sat on the balcony and stared at the city lights. I thought about Daniel, about how he used to remind me that survival wasn't just about keeping the lights on, it was about keeping the love alive inside the walls. And now, here I was with a brighter apartment, fuller cabinets, heavier guilt. The irony wasn't lost on me. The more Mr. Williams gave us, the further apart my own family seemed to drift. And for the first time, I wondered if help could sometimes weigh as heavy as the burden it tried to lift. I thought the walls of that new apartment would keep out the noise of the old life. The neighbors fighting, the leaky pipes, the constant reminders of what we didn't have. But walls don't keep out history. They only echo it back to you in different ways. It was a Saturday afternoon when Mr. Williams stopped by. I had just finished folding laundry, sheets that smelled like lavender instead of mildew now, and he sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, his presence filling the room the way wealth always does, even when it tries to shrink itself down. Angela, he began, his tone careful, I think there are things you should know about Daniel. My breath caught. What do you mean? He clasped his hands, his fingers pale against the dark wood of the table. Years ago, when my business was struggling, Daniel was working for me as a contractor. I was close to losing it all. He talked me through a deal, gave me advice I wasn't getting from anyone else. He was steady, wise. He saved me from making a choice that would have bankrupted me. I owed him more than I ever admitted. I blinked stunned. My husband, the man who never once boasted about himself, had been a quiet anchor in another man's storm. That's why I've been helping you, Williams continued. Not out of pity, not charity, a debt and a promise. I frowned. A promise? He looked down, then back at me, his eyes heavy. He made me swear, Angela. If anything ever happened to him, if life cut him short, I was to look after you and the kids. He said you were his whole world, and he wanted to make sure the world didn't crush you if he wasn't here. The words hit me harder than I expected. My throat tightened, and my eyes burned with tears I tried to blink away. For a moment, I saw Daniel again, his easy smile, his steady hands fixing things around the house, his quiet devotion. He had been planning for us even in ways I never knew. But before I could answer, a sharp voice cut through the room. So that's it? Jasmine stood in the doorway, arms crossed, her expression carved from anger. I hadn't even heard her bedroom door open. You've been in this together the whole time, she spat. Dad and this man making promises about us like we're property. And now you're just letting him run our lives. Jasmine, that's not, I began. Yes, it is, she snapped. You move us into his apartment, you take his job, you let him buy our groceries. And now I find out Dad basically handed us over to him like some charity case before he died? This is disgusting. Her words sliced through the air, cruel in their youth, raw in their pain. Mr. Williams shifted, uncomfortable. Young lady, don't young lady me, she interrupted, her eyes blazing. You're not family, you're just some rich old man who thinks he can buy one. The silence that followed was thick, a rope tightening around all of us. Marcus appeared behind her, rubbing his forehead. Jas, stop, you're twisting everything. But Jasmine wasn't listening. She stormed into the kitchen, snatched her phone off the counter, and glared at me. You think he's saving us, Mom? All I see is you selling us off piece by piece. Dad would be ashamed. And with that, she was gone again, her door slamming so hard the frame shook. I sat there trembling, ashamed not because of her words, but because deep down, a part of me feared she might be right. Williams cleared his throat gently. Angela, I didn't mean to cause this kind of trouble. I only wanted to honor a promise. I swallowed hard, my chest tight. I know, I do, but Jasmine doesn't understand. She's hurting. And maybe I am too. For the rest of the evening, I couldn't shake the echo of my daughter's accusation, selling us off piece by piece. And though I told myself it wasn't true, that everything I did was for survival, I still lay awake that night staring at the ceiling, wondering whose version of the truth was closer to the one Daniel would have recognized. The days that followed felt like walking across a floor that might crack beneath me at any moment. Jasmine barely spoke to me. When she did, her words carried that sharp edge, like she was testing how deep she could cut before I bled. Marcus tried to soften the silence, filling the apartment with his calm, but even he couldn't stitch together what was unraveling. And then there was Mr. Williams. He kept showing up, not every day, not enough to call it an intrusion, but often enough that his presence became part of the air we breathed. Sometimes he came to check on the restaurant, to ask how I was handling the new staff. Sometimes he stopped by with groceries, insisting they were extras from one of his kitchens. Once he brought a second-hand laptop for Marcus, who accepted it with gratitude, while Jasmine glared at it like it was poisoned. The more he came, the more I noticed the man himself, not just his money or his offers. I noticed how his hands shook a little when he lifted a coffee cup, how he leaned back in chairs with the posture of someone used to carrying weight that no one else could see. I noticed how, when he spoke about my husband, his voice softened, as if Daniel's name alone was a reminder of humility. One evening after closing at the restaurant, he invited me to dinner. "Nothing fancy," he said, "just a quiet place I go to when I need to think." I almost said no. But then I thought of Daniel, of the promise, of the tiredness in my bones that longed for an evening where I wasn't mother, manager, widow, provider, just a woman at a table. The restaurant was indeed quiet, tucked on a corner with candles that flickered like secrets. We ate slowly, talked about books we never had time to read, about music that reminded us of old summers. He told me about growing up poor in a small town, about a father who never praised him, about clawing his way into business with nothing but stubbornness. I told him about Daniel's laugh, about how Marcus used to build cities out of cardboard boxes, about Jasmine's obsession with ballet before high school swallowed her whole. Somewhere between the soup and the dessert, I caught myself laughing. Not politely, not forced. Real laughter, the kind I hadn't let escape in months. His eyes warmed at the sound, and for a moment, I felt something in my chest stir. Something I hadn't let myself feel since before Daniel's accident. On the way back, the city lights smeared across the car windows like streaks of paint. I sat in silence, fighting the voice inside me. "Angela, you're a widow. You should be mourning, not smiling at another man. What will your children think? What will people say?" When I walked through the apartment door, Marcus looked up from his laptop and smiled. "You look lighter," he said, but Jasmine wasn't fooled. She glanced up from the couch, her face hard. "So that's it, huh? You and him now, just like that." "Jasmine," Marcus warned, but she stood, her voice rising. "Dad's not even cold in the ground, and you're letting some old rich guy buy his way into our lives. What's next, Mom? You move us into his house, you wear his last name?" Her words hit like blows. "It's not like that," I whispered, but my voice shook. She shook her head, eyes wet but furious. "You don't even see it, do you? He's not saving you, Mom. He's replacing him." And then she stormed into her room, leaving the rest of us in silence. I stood frozen in the living room, Marcus's hand hovering near mine, the echo of Jasmine's anger ringing louder than the laughter I had allowed myself hours earlier. That night, lying in bed, I pressed my palms together as if prayer might untangle the knot inside me. Because somewhere between grief and gratitude, between exhaustion and longing, I was afraid Jasmine's words weren't just anger. I was afraid they might hold a sliver of truth. Jasmine didn't just slam doors anymore, she slammed whole days shut. At breakfast, she barely touched her cereal. At dinner, she scrolled her phone with earbuds jammed in, her body a wall of silence across the table. When Mr. Williams visited, she vanished into her room, the thud of her door carrying a message louder than words. I tried to talk to her. God knows I tried. I knocked softly at night, asking if she wanted tea, if she wanted to sit with me, if she wanted anything. Her answers came short and sharp. "No, I'm busy. Leave me alone." It was like watching my daughter dissolve in front of me, replaced by someone brittle, someone I couldn't reach. Marcus kept telling me to give her time. "She's a teenager, Mom. Anger is their second language." But his voice betrayed worry too. He knew Jasmine wasn't just angry, she was lost. The breaking point came on a rainy Thursday. I came home from the restaurant later than usual, the weight of a 12-hour day dragging at my shoulders. Marcus was on the couch, his head in his hands. "What's wrong?" I asked, already bracing. He looked up, his eyes dark with worry. "She's gone." My heart lurched. "Gone? What do you mean gone?" "She left hours ago, took a bag, she's not answering texts." "Mom, she left with Derek." The name made my stomach turn. Derek was trouble wrapped in charm, the kind of boy who always had a new excuse, a new scheme, a new lie. He was 20, unemployed, with a smile that got him more than it should. Jasmine had mentioned him once, casually, like a passing shadow. I hadn't realized how deep that shadow had fallen over her. I felt my knees weaken. "God, no," Marcus stood, steadying me. "I've tried calling. Nothing. I think they might have gone to his cousin's place outside the city." Before I could even form a plan, the phone rang. A number I didn't recognize. My hands shook as I answered. "Mrs. Robinson?" A deep voice asked. "This is Officer Green. We've found your daughter." the world spun, relief and terror collided in my chest. She's safe, he continued quickly. We picked her up with a group loitering near the bus station. Nothing illegal, just not a good place for a 17-year-old girl at midnight. I swallowed hard, my throat burning. Thank you, officer. When we arrived at the station, Jasmine sat slouched in a plastic chair, her eyes defiant, her cheeks flushed with embarrassment. Derek was nowhere in sight, thank God, but the officer explained he had bolted the minute police showed up. On the ride home, silence filled the car. Marcus drove, his knuckles white on the wheel. Jasmine stared out the window, refusing to look at me. When we walked through the door, Mr. Williams was there. He had stopped by to check on us, unaware of the storm that had already broken. "What happened?" he asked, his brow furrowed. And before I could stop myself, before I could filter my grief or my exhaustion, I broke. I sank into a chair, covered my face with my hands, and sobbed, loud, raw sobs that I hadn't allowed myself since the funeral. Williams knelt beside me, his hand resting gently on my shoulder, steady as an anchor. "Angela," he said softly, "you don't have to do this alone." Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Jasmine stiffen, her expression twisting. To her, his hand on me was proof of everything she'd feared, that I was letting another man step into the space her father had left behind. She let out a bitter laugh. "Perfect, you've got him now, guess you don't need me." Her words sliced through me, sharper than any slap. "Jasmine," I choked, reaching out, but she was already storming down the hall, her footsteps a drumbeat of accusation. The slam of her door shook the walls. In the silence that followed, I realized something I had been trying to ignore. Grief hadn't just broken me, it had broken my family. And no matter how much light this new life promised, the shadows of loss were still deep, still dangerous, and still pulling at us from every side. The next morning, I woke to the smell of coffee. Marcus had brewed a pot and set out 3 mugs at the table, though only 2 were filled. The empty mug sat in front of Jasmine's chair like an invitation or maybe a prayer. She came out eventually, still in her pajamas, hair messy, eyes puffy from a night of crying. She sat, wordless, poured coffee into the waiting mug, and stirred it with too much force. The spoon clinked against the sides like a drumbeat of anger. I tried to start gently. "Jasmine, we need to talk about last night." Her gaze was fixed on the table. "What's there to talk about? You've already made your choice." My stomach nodded. "What choice? Baby, there's no choice here. You're my daughter. You come first." Her eyes shot up then, blazing. "That's a lie. You keep letting him in. You let him touch you. You let him buy things for us, for Marcus, for you. Don't you see what's happening? He's taking Dad's place." The words hit hard because they echoed the fear I carried in secret. I forced my voice steady. "No one could ever take your father's place. Not for me, not for you, not for Marcus. But Mr. Williams, he's just trying to help." "Help," she spat, "or own us?" Marcus slammed his mug down. "Jasmine, stop. He's not the enemy. Mom's drowning, and he's the only one who's thrown us a rope." Jasmine glared at him. "Oh, so you're fine with selling our family name for a free laptop? For some fancy groceries? You don't care if Mom's bought, but I do." "Bought?" Marcus barked. "Do you think Mom asked for any of this? You think she wanted to bury Dad alone without enough money for flowers? You think she wanted to work herself sick just to keep the lights on? Williams has given her breathing room, Jasmine. That's not ownership, that's kindness." The air between them burned hot, words like sparks threatening to ignite something bigger. I reached across the table, my hands trembling. "Stop," I whispered, but it came out sharper than I intended. "Both of you, please." They froze, staring at me. I could feel the weight of their eyes, waiting for me to decide where I stood, between them, between their father's ghost and this new presence neither of them trusted in the same way. "I didn't ask for Mr. Williams' help," I said slowly, carefully. "But I won't lie, I'm grateful for it. It doesn't erase your father. Nothing ever could. Your father lives in this home, in us every day. But we can't let our grief turn into poison. If we do, it will kill what's left of us." Silence fell. Jasmine's lip trembled, but she pushed back her chair with a screech and stormed into her room again. Marcus sighed, leaning back like all the fight had drained out of him. The sound of the door slamming made my chest ache, but this time it wasn't just grief. It was fear. Fear that no matter how much I tried, I was losing my daughter, one slammed door at a time. That evening, Mr. Williams called to ask how things were going. I stared at the phone, torn. Part of me wanted to lean into the comfort he offered, to let his steady voice carry me for just a moment. Another part of me heard Jasmine's accusation. He's taking Dad's place, and I couldn't lift the phone. I let it ring out. When the silence returned, heavier than before, I sat alone at the table staring at the three mugs still sitting there. One full, one half empty, one untouched. Like a portrait of our family. Broken, unfinished, waiting for something to bring us back together. 2 days passed before Jasmine spoke more than a few words to me. They weren't kind words, but at least they were words. It was Sunday afternoon, the kind of humid day that clung to your skin, when Mr. Williams knocked at the door. I hesitated before opening it. Part of me wanted to pretend we weren't home, but Marcus, ever the peacemaker, was already moving toward the door. "Mr. Williams," Marcus said with a smile that carried just a little too much effort. "Come in." He stepped inside, dressed sharp as always, though there was something softer in his eyes, like he knew he was intruding on fragile ground. Jasmine appeared from the hallway, arms crossed, her glare sharp enough to cut glass. "Angela," he said, looking at me, "I know I've been coming around often, maybe too often, but I wanted to talk to you all together." We gathered in the living room. The air was thick, the silence heavier than any sermon. Mr. Williams cleared his throat. "I've been thinking," he began slowly. "Daniel was a good man and he meant a great deal to me. I never told you this, Angela, but back when he worked on my construction sites, he saved me from making a costly mistake, something that could have ruined me. I owed him then. Maybe I still owe him now." I felt my chest tighten. He paused, then continued. "I can't replace him, I wouldn't try, but I can help his family. I want to pay for Jasmine's college, and if Marcus decides to continue his studies, I'll cover that too. You won't have to worry about tuition, housing, any of it." The words hung in the air like a miracle and a curse all at once. Marcus leaned forward, eyes wide. "Sir, that's—" But Jasmine cut him off, her voice sharp and shaking. "See, I told you. He wants to own us. First it's groceries, then laptops, then tuition. What's next? You gonna buy us a new dad?" "Jasmine," I snapped, but she pushed on, her words hot and raw. "You think this is kindness, but it's not. It's control. And you're letting him take it, Mom. You're letting him walk in here and erase everything Dad built with his own hands. You're letting him erase Dad." Her voice cracked on that last word, and for the first time I saw what was under all the anger: fear. Fear that accepting help meant losing the last fragile thread connecting us to Daniel. I swallowed hard. "Baby, no one can erase your father. Not money, not kindness, not time. Your father is part of you. He's part of Marcus. He's part of me. That will never change." But Jasmine's eyes filled with tears and she shook her head. "You don't get it. You've already let him in." Then she ran to her room again, the door slamming so hard a picture frame rattled on the wall. The silence that followed was unbearable. Marcus stared at the floor, jaw clenched. Mr. Williams shifted uncomfortably in his chair, looking older than I'd ever seen him. "Angela," he said softly, "I didn't mean to cause more pain. I only wanted to honor Daniel, to honor you. If I've overstepped, tell me, I'll step back." His words were careful, but I could hear something deeper beneath them, a tremor of vulnerability, of hope. He wasn't just offering money. He was offering a place in our lives. And I realized, sitting there between my son's quiet gratitude and my daughter's furious grief, that I was standing on a fault line. One wrong move, and the whole fragile ground of our family could split apart. I looked at Mr. Williams, at the kindness and danger of his offer, and I didn't know if I wanted to accept it or run from it, because both choices carried a cost. And either way, nothing would ever be the same again. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table long after the house had gone quiet, the clock ticking loud in the silence, the streetlight casting a weak glow across the floor. The envelope with the past due bills lay open in front of me like a wound I couldn't close. Mr. Williams's offer echoed in my head: college tuition, housing, a chance for Marcus and Jasmine to walk into futures brighter than the one I could afford to give them. It should have felt like a blessing. Instead, it felt like a test. Would accepting his help mean betraying Daniel? Would it mean proving Jasmine right, that I was letting another man buy his way into our lives? I pressed my palms against my face, whispering a prayer into the dark. "God, I don't know what to do. Show me the way. Show me how to keep my family together." The next morning, Jasmine avoided me completely. She left early, her breakfast untouched, her earbuds in before I could even say good morning. Marcus lingered, hovering in the doorway. Mom, he said quietly, don't let her words sink too deep. She's scared. That's all this is. She doesn't want to lose you too. I nodded, but my heart still ached. I know, but what if helping her feels like losing her anyway? He didn't answer. Maybe there wasn't an answer. By the time evening came, Mr. Williams returned, not with groceries or gifts this time, but simply himself. He asked if he could sit at the table. I nodded, though my chest tightened as he did. I need to say something, he began. To you, and if she'll listen to Jasmine, I don't want to replace Daniel. I couldn't. He was my friend and his memory is too strong. What I want is to carry a little of the weight you've been forced to carry alone. Not because I pity you, because I respect you. His voice shook on that last word, and for the first time, I saw not the wealthy man with crisp suits, but a man tired, lonely, searching for something he couldn't buy. The front door creaked then. Jasmine had come home. She stood in the doorway, her eyes narrowed, but she didn't storm off. She lingered, listening. Mr. Williams turned to her. Jasmine, I know you don't trust me, and maybe you never will, that's your right, but you should know this. I don't want to erase your father. I want to honor him by making sure his children have the chances he wanted for them. If you never accept a dime from me, fine, but don't mistake my intentions. I'm here because your father mattered to me, and because you matter to your mother. For a moment, I thought her face softened, but then she crossed her arms tighter. Money doesn't fix anything, it doesn't bring him back. No, Mr. Williams admitted, it doesn't, but neither does anger. The room went still. Jasmine's lip trembled, but she didn't reply. She turned, disappeared into her room, and this time she didn't slam the door. She closed it softly, like even she wasn't sure what she felt anymore. I exhaled a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Marcus gave me a look, half hope, half caution. Later, after Mr. Williams left, I sat alone on the couch, staring at the family picture on the wall, Daniel's arm around me, Marcus and Jasmine younger, smiling wide, the world still whole back then. And I realized the truth I'd been avoiding. We were never going to be that family again. That picture was gone, sealed in the past. But maybe, if we could survive this storm, Jasmine's grief, my guilt, Mr. Williams's fragile offer, we could become something else. Not the same, never the same, but still a family. The question that kept me awake, though, was simple. Would Jasmine let us? The days that followed were quiet, almost too quiet. The kind of quiet that comes right before a storm, or perhaps after one has passed. Jasmine didn't say much, she didn't have to. Her silence carried more weight than any argument could, but there were small moments, small cracks in her walls. One evening I found her sitting on the porch, staring out into the backyard. Her legs pulled up to her chest, her hoodie pulled tightly over her head. I joined her in the stillness, not forcing conversation, just letting the weight of the moment sit between us. "Why are you still here?" she asked, her voice small, vulnerable. "Why does he keep coming around?" I looked at her, searching for the right words. "Because he sees us, Jasmine. I think he's just trying to help, not to replace your dad, but to help us heal, however that might look." Her eyes flicked up to me hard at first, but I could see the hurt slowly soften behind her gaze. I don't know how to accept that. It feels like we're giving up on Dad, letting him fade away. I reached out, taking her hand gently. "It's not about forgetting him, it's about letting us move forward. I promise you, Jasmine, your father's memory will never fade. Not for me, not for Marcus, and not for you. We can honor him and still find a way to live." Jasmine nodded, a small, shaky breath escaping her lips. She didn't say anything else, but for the first time in weeks, she didn't pull away. Over the next few weeks, there were no grand gestures, no sudden epiphanies, no big hugs or long talks. It was slow, quiet work, like mending a frayed thread, one stitch at a time. Jasmine spoke more, but with caution, as though testing the waters. Marcus and I were patient, giving her space to find her own way. As for Mr. Williams, he respected the distance. He came by occasionally to check in, to bring groceries or an old book he thought I might like, but there were no more heavy offers, no grand gestures. He didn't try to push his help onto us. It was simply there, waiting for us to accept it when we were ready. And slowly we began to heal. Not perfectly, not all at once, but we were moving forward together. One afternoon, as the summer sun began to dip, I found myself sitting on the porch again, this time with both Marcus and Jasmine beside me. There was no animosity, no silence hanging heavy. It was just us together in a quiet peace. The kind of peace that only comes after a storm, when you know you've weathered it and there's hope on the other side. I think I'm going to try, Jasmine said suddenly, her voice steady, the hesitation gone. I'm going to go back to ballet. Maybe I won't be a dancer like I thought, but I miss it. A smile crept onto my face. That's a start, baby. That's all we need, a start. And Marcus, my steady son, spoke up, his voice soft but sure. Maybe I'll finish that degree, Mom, for Dad, for us. My heart swelled as I looked at them. Two children, each carrying their own burdens, but each finding their own way. I hadn't failed them. They hadn't failed me. We were still here. We're going to be okay, I whispered, more to myself than anyone else. We are. And in that moment, surrounded by the people I loved, I believed it. To all the readers, thank you for walking this journey with us. Every family has its scars, its moments of loss and pain, but there's always a chance for healing. No matter the darkness, there is always light. May your lives be filled with love, resilience, and the warmth of those you hold dear. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and may your families always find their way back to the light. With all my heart, Angela.